Hello, I'm Toycat, and my passport was about to expire, so I took one last trip with it to Amsterdam. When I flew back from Amsterdam, it was a very small plane, and it took less than an hour, so because of time zones, the flight actually landed before it took off, and it was a flight that required passport control on both ends, because of course, the Netherlands and the UK are different countries with different immigration policies. Something which can't be said for a flight which is literally 25 times longer than that from Boston to Hawaii. This is an 11-hour flight, but it is a domestic flight, and so you don't get any meals on this, despite the fact that if you were to fly eastbound to any country on this side, you would get 2 free ones, but that's the difference between an international and a domestic flight, right? And indeed, when we talk about the shortest flights in the world, you always find a list of like Hawaiian Islands or Scottish Islands, and the reason the shortest flights exist, you know, everyone knows about Westray, it's like, yeah, there's an island here, there's an island there, setting up a ferry service doesn't make any sense, but they already have the airports, so what if we use the airports to connect them? It's more like a bus than a plane in some ways, and you know, when you get off the plane, you expect it to be some exotic different destination, not just another island within the small sub-region of Scotland you're already in, and so that is why I wanted to go through the top 10 shortest international flights in the world. The shortest flights that you can get on, get off, and then be in an entirely different country, or at least have to have gone through passport control, and is the UK on the list? No, but a lot of islands are if you want to guess, but first things first, yes, I went to Amsterdam, and to keep things brief, they are actually a very fun place. I feel like British people go there on an alarmingly regular basis, and it actually inspired a video because of this image right here. This is a very real moment of me inside of a toilet in the Netherlands, and if that lets you know what the video is going to be about, then that's great. But basically, it's just a fun thing that you always forget about Northern Europe. There's a lot of odd decisions that were made culturally that feel, you know, like, again, when you talk about like, oh yeah, like land of capitalism is America, but you know, that situation never happens over there, right? Anyway, speaking of things that don't happen in America, they won't let you into the country, just like many others, when your passport is 6 months expired, and so when I mentioned that my passport expired, fun fact, it actually didn't. I got this passport just under 10 years ago, and I got it kind of for traveling on this channel. I think every single trip that I've gone with this has been documented in some form here, but what's really fun about the fact that I got this passport just under 10 years ago is that it lasts 10 years exactly, but you can't use a passport once it reaches that age. So, fun fact, I had to apply for a new one, and so they have this really fun thing where it says if your passport is burgundy, this is the old pre-EU passport, or has European Union on the cover, you can still use it as long as it's valid for travel, which I just think is hilarious. Like, some number of people are like, oh, I got an EU passport, can't be traveling anywhere with this, now we ain't in that European Union anymore, which I just think is hilarious that they had to write that. But what's also fun is I had to renew my passport, and so I needed to take some photos. That's why I'm in a suit, because I realized that I'm too honest with border security people, and when they ask me questions, I give them the real answers, even though that makes them freak out and ask way more questions. I've had all sorts of issues because of the fact that I'm too honest with border people, and so I want to make it easier for them to, you know, just, again, what a border person wants is they don't want the truth. They want you to smile and be like, I am here for business. I will add to your country's GDP. I won't commit crimes, and then I'll leave. That's what they want me to say, and you know, I am traveling to lots of countries for business. It's just I don't want to have to clarify that, like, yeah, I'm gonna like eat McDonald's, and then I'm gonna record that and post it. You don't want to have all of those questions posed to you by a border person. They don't want to ask it, I don't want to answer it, and so I've got myself a suit for my brand new passport photo, which I would need if I was to go on the shortest international flight in the world. So I did this at first by just trying to use logic, like, it's got to be somewhere to the UK, right? Like, I mean, it just had to be. Like, if there were flights from, even if you look at like, okay, so what about Liverpool to Dublin or something? And even though that is technically within the common travel area, so it wouldn't count. And as I started to piece things together, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be like Brussels to London. But it turns out I was way off, because if you just do a simple Google search, you can find the shortest international flights that have been gathered, and the list seems to be the same between every site that seems to list these. But I didn't want to trust this on the surface, because yeah, it says the shortest flight is one that I kind of figured, like Congo to Congo, but it also has a bunch of details here, and I'm like, yeah, this must have aged, and this must have been like years ago pre-pandemic. Can you still fly from this place to this place? So here's the scoop. There are 2 Congos, Dr. Congo and Republic of Congo, and Dr. Congo over here might claim to be more democratic, and despite being the larger country of more people, is actually substantially less so, and in some ways is maybe a bit more dangerous. But what's important to know is that both Congos are huge countries, but they have both their capitals on the exact same river. That river is the Congo river. Wait, I think I'm starting to see why they're both called that. And so Brazzaville and Kinshasa are two separate capital cities right across a river from one another. They're really, really close by. It's just 3 kilometers from one side to the other, and it's kind of a similar situation to the Scottish island, despite the fact that millions of people live here instead of 12. And that is because of the fact that there is basically no way to get between them. They did actually open up a ferry route during the time we've been recording videos on this channel. It's a 4-a-day ferry where you go through lots of customs checks where you have to get asked for bribes a lot of time. It's got all the usual like land crossing borders in Africa problem, but it is in theory possible. But what you want to do if you want to go the more official way is you fly from one airport to the other. Indeed, for the longest time, this was the only way between the two cities, and so you fly 26 kilometers, which is fun because on the OAG website, it claims that this flight takes 45 minutes. It claims it takes 50 minutes, which is super, super fun. And I just wanted to know, like, okay, this is a lot of these websites will read things from before COVID. Is this a flight you can still buy? And yes, it is. It will cost you £456. It looks like that's true on any day of the week, but it won't actually fly every day of the week. As you can see, some days you have to fly via Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. It's a long detour to make, and you probably aren't going to want to do that. But yeah, you can fly about 3 or 4 times a week between these two cities, and I mean, it's so expensive. Again, just not even just on a price level, but on a per mile basis or a per kilometer basis, you're paying just under £20 or just over $20 to fly between these two cities. And so I guess there are enough business people that need to do that regularly. But isn't it crazy that that is how this works? And yeah, the biggest reason why it needed to, outside of the ferry, which runs literally 4 times a day and doesn't sound like it's a lot of fun, the only road route between them, if you want to get your car or if you want to get any other personal like that, is you have to drive all the way down the river to here. The first crossing is between Dr. Congo and Dr. Congo. That takes 6 hours. And then you have to drive all the way up to this border and then all the way... My point here is to say is that it's not a lot of fun. And if you don't have 13 hours spare, you've got to fly or you've got to do the dodgy boat. And neither of those things sound like a great deal of fun. So pro tip, make sure you don't. Speaking of not make sure you don't, at this point you might be saying, okay, this isn't really what we wanted with the shortest international flight, because are you going through that big of a cultural change from Congo to Congo? In fact, you know, to an outsider, especially one who's not that familiar with African culture, you might say like, well, they're just 2 Congos, right? I mean, even though they do have very different countries and histories and stories, ultimately it's flying from Congo to Congo, so it doesn't feel like it counts. And so what is the shortest international flight in the world that isn't between 2 countries of the same name? Well, I'm glad you asked as we move into part 2 of our question, and shortly it should just be the second flight on the list, right? St. Martin, from either part to St. Bartholomew, which is 31 kilometers away. Does this flight exist? Yes. And fun fact, even though it's 50 minutes to fly 25 kilometers, so you fly at an average speed of about 0.5 kilometers an hour. Not actually, but we'll talk about why later. Let's look what the flight is like from St. Martin, a place you might want to go, to St. Bartholomew. So St. Bartholomew, I guess is how we say it. As you can see on the exact same days, it is a substantially cheaper flight, but still wildly expensive. It is £254, and so to show you what you get for that, you know, just for comparison here, we'll go to St. I feel like the one part of the world I know least is always the Caribbean, but we'll go to St. Bartholomew right now. Okay, this is a fun game. How fast can I find it? So this is St. Vincent, that's St. Lucian, St. Lucia, and then one of these around here. There we go. This is St. Martin. And so where is St. Bart, which is where I think all the big parties are held, right? It's got to be one of the other ones around here logically. Is this St. Bart? Hey, it is St. Bart. Look at that. Worked it out. Never looked at this place before. But as you can see, they are 2 very close by islands. But what are you going to do? You're going to catch a boat between them? That's not fun. You're already at the airport, so take a plane, and indeed you can do that on the second shortest international flight in the world. And I would I would argue that like St. Martin, you know, at least the Dutch side is quite different to here. So you could argue like, yeah, you go from, the Netherlands to France. You know, you're going from one type of Caribbean culture to another. That is quite interesting. But again, you then might say, well, this only counts because of islands. Islands feel like they're cheating in their own weird way. And outside of the definition when we say everything's an island, let's say, what is the shortest international flight in the world that's between 2 countries that don't have the same name and where at least one of them isn't an island? Well, I'm glad you've asked because the UK finally gets to come in. Nope, just kidding. It's not true. The shortest international flight in the world between two countries, two cities that are not that is between Dammam here in Saudi Arabia and between Bahrain. If you want to fly between these two places, as we're going to do, it looks like I already looked for this earlier. So Dammam Airport. Feels like it should be Dammam, but we've got it. Over to Bahrain. Can you still fly the flight? The answer is yes, you can. Gulf Air will fly you there, right there, for 40 minutes. And this then has to have the question of like, okay, you know, maybe you could believe that in, like the Congo, it takes them that long to fly the plane. They're doing something horribly wrong. Maybe they're circling around a bunch of the time. How does this flight at just over 50 kilometers take them that long? How can it possibly be that every kilometer takes them most... Oh, actually, there's the airport down there. How can it be that every kilometer takes them more or less a minute to fly? And this is a fun way to bring up one of my favorite dumb concepts about airlines. It's called schedule padding. As you'll see if you ever look on Google too long, they'll give you a warning when flights are likely to be late. They'll say, oh yeah, this flight's late a lot high percent of the time. And airlines are measured in all sorts of ways by this late percentageness. And so given that there is all sorts of pressure on airlines to be on time, employees and whatnot too, what do? They schedule pad. This flight does not take 40 minutes. In the same way that Amsterdam to London does not take as long as you'll read on the internet. This is, okay, so Amsterdam, Schiphol not to Bahrain, but to London. If you are to make this flight, which by the way, substantially cheaper than any of on this list, as you can see, it will take an hour and 10 minutes, but it doesn't actually. It's an hour and 10 minutes from the gate to the gate on a bad day, such that they can get you there early, or exactly on time by going a bit slower than they want to. And so one of the fun things that I wanted to kind of bring up here is that, did you know, fun fact, you can actually have flights that are much shorter than they say they are, and that's the more likely outcome because of schedule padding. So, and also a fun thing about that is it means flights have actually gotten longer, not just in, you know, like the lifetimes of people you know, but literally in the time I've been traveling. Like I mentioned, I've been using this passport for about a decade now. It's gonna be sad to see it go. There's so many weird stamps and like Russian visas and weird stuff in there. Yeah, despite the fact that I have my passport with all of my fun in there, I have to get another one. And during the time I've been flying, I have witnessed flights getting longer and longer, but they're not actually. They're just trying to achieve the human psychology effect that we've all known is true for a long time, that you'd rather be exactly on time and be late, you know, you'd rather have something be longer but be on time all the time and be predictable than have something which is wildly irregular and fast. And that's why we have all sorts of fun things about the human race. And you know what else we have that's fun about the human race? This video. If you liked it, then that's good. If you didn't like it, that's bad. Make sure to join the Patreon to help me cover my huge passport costs. Traveling's expensive, apparently. And make sure to send me your credit or debit card details and a digital photo and a passport. Wait, I have to give them my passport? I want to keep it. It's got all my memories in here. Speaking of memories, yeah, I'm going to have a blue passport. So I'm going to start talking about my favorite benefits of Brexit, and or I'm going to become American in a few weeks' time. So look forward to that happening, because I'll see y'all fellas in the next one. Goodbye.